So I guess to start with, Ken, in this case, which came first, the filmmaker or the subject? What was the initial hook for you?
Christopher Nolan contacted me and said he'd like to come and talk to me about a project, and so he flew to London and saw a production of Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale, which we were doing in the West End. And the next morning I met him, and he was absolutely brilliant in his analysis of the play and the experience of the play. So it was fascinating to hear that go. I thought it was a great treat to have a kind of workshop on the sort of dramaturgy behind The Winter's Tale from a really passionate and intellectual outsider. But anyway, so that took up half the morning, and then the other half of the morning he said, "Look, I've written this film called Dunkirk, and there's a part in it I'd like you to play." And he took me through what he intended, and but the truth is, as it were, he got me at hello. So it was the filmmaker.
So who is Commander Bolton? What's going on with him?
Commander Bolton is a naval commander in this film in charge of the safe evacuation of men from the mole, the long breakwater that stretches into the ocean at Dunkirk, and we were able to film there and to try and recreate some of the challenges that were mounting this operation in that particular part of it, which was to get as many of those 340,000 men off the beach as possible. So he dealt with being bombed and with the difficulty of the tidal system, which meant big boats couldn't get in easily for half of the time, and was constantly under pressure, both in terms of actual enemy attack and stress and lack of sleep across the days of the operation. And he's based on a number of real individuals whom Chris Nolan had researched, and he becomes a sort of a representative of what was happening at sea.
I now know from you that Nolan is a great drama critic, but the other thing I know, having heard him say it many times in the last 2 days, is how he likes to shoot things for real. So
yes.
You really were on the mole.
Yes,
and
indeed.
You're not against green screen, and presumably that's got to add a flavour and a context.
Yes, I think that across any shooting day, you just have the real sense of how, particularly by the ocean, the temperature, the wind, the weather in general varies enormously and dramatically. So suddenly you're in a rainstorm, suddenly there's bright sunshine, everything makes a difference. Everything made all the variables in that rescue operation always challenging to deal with. So you being there in the here and now, and as Chris famously doesn't like to sit down, and nobody else does, and you get there's an energy, tremendous energy and natural quality around the set. For this picture, that's my one experience of working with Chris, which was, continually kept you, as the film does, in the situation.
One of the things the film shows very well is how young most of the people were involved. But of course, Bolton is an older character. What's Bolton's perspective on the whole event?
You get the sense with characters that, like the Bolton or Mark Rylance's character, that these are people who've probably been through the previous Great War, the war to end all wars, and I think that they are, in a way, they represent a certain kind of paternal solidity, a certainty that that generation who know what it's like will either come for you or they will stay here and be by your side while they see what they have been through before. And whilst they also understand, having been through warfare themselves, the fragility of it and the necessity of helping and trying to get people home. So in a way, Bolton's job is simply to be there and be a beacon, be an example, be someone not panicking. Being a human example and a quiet, organized, logical coordinator in the midst of all of that chaos. But of course, what's interesting is that he's also a human being, and he also gets scared, and he also really feels this responsibility to this group of 400,000, mainly English but also French soldiers, and so he becomes a sort of a barometer, if you like, for the what's going on outside.
And we see a lot of that played off James D'Arcy representing the army. Is there a tension, an army-navy tension there, or are they all working together?
I think both. They have to work together, and there is a tension. There is a certain sense that their way is the best way. But one of the very fascinating things about a picture like this and that situation is that the elements are so elemental. You have to deal with wind, whether there's a nice moment between them when an army man is unable to understand quite the nature of the tidal system, which is very helpful that the Navy man does understand, but at the same time it's the army getting all those men to that point of embarkation, so they're forced to understand the other's perspective, and there's mutual respect, but there's also a sort of competitive thing that the situation sort of wears down, because in the end it's a very clear example of a necessity, however difficult, of working together.
If Nolan had you at hello for you as an actor, what was it like for you as a director watching him?
A privilege. Another director I admire enormously, Danny Boyle, once said to me that one thing he envied about my position was that I was able to watch other directors direct, which he can't get to do. And in this case, because in that case I could see him and work with Danny a couple of times, and to watch Chris Nolan in action was a privilege. But also to have met him, that initial contact, to feel the passion behind it. He's such an interesting figure for his parallel capacity, and I think both things are meeting in his work. There's always been a sort of, at least to this outside observer, tremendous intellect, amazing sort of mathematical scientific brain, and with this project it felt as though it was coming to a sort of, to the other frontal lobe, as it were, and all this sort of passion and sort of wildness and pure feeling were being expressed. Something, to get back to the initial conversation when we were talking about Shakespeare, he was talking in his own life about with his children getting older, the value of life, the fragility of life was very, the value of time was really key to him, and he saw Dunkirk as a way in which that was all wrapped up. Time was so precious, both to get them off the beaches and in those young lives to be saved, and so to see him work that out against our own, very trivial by contrast set of challenging circumstances, big movie group, thousands of extras, the beach, the weather, everything changes, real ship traffic going on, to see him do all that with that laser clarity and vision, and basically this marriage of head and heart, which seemed to represent where he was going with this film, was really very, very impressive. And most impressive was that he seemed to have time for everyone. He didn't need to be Father Christmas, as it were, about it, but he just is able, rather like footballers, when they talk about footballers who can create, they sort of operate in a different time element, they slow things down, they make other people have to run around. Somehow Chris could, whilst the machine is relentlessly moving forward, questions being asked, what do we need, where's the camera, somehow he could give that instruction and still talk to that actor, be it someone with no lines or someone with one line or somebody famous or somebody who lives in Dunkirk or whoever, whatever. That capacity to sort of poetically multitask was very impressive.
It struck me watching it. I was thinking back to, well, you and Henry V, and there is something very British, and as Chris is on record as wanting to make this British story. Is there something sort of, patriotic's the wrong word, but Dunkirk is now deep in our psyche. Did you guys feel that and that responsibility?
The name and what we associate with it, which is some attitude that suggests that you need never give up, that somehow there is a larger sort of community, spirit, movement, whatever it is, that can help, will support, very modestly expressed, but with great beauty. I think that idea of the Dunkirk spirit has somehow been in our consciousness, at least in mine growing up. This film, I think, really roots it down into a sort of sensibility that is pro-human, pro-life, pro-peace, pro-no fuss. It's for a spectacular sort of all kind of effects blazing movie about something incredibly powerful, it is a very modest film. it has the modest center. It's about modesty. It's about a sort of graciousness that is exemplified in you know, the spirit of somebody like Mark Rylance's character, or in the bravery of Finn Whitehead's, or in the you know, the beautiful kind of doggedness of Tom Hardy's character, or just there's something about their characters that are so human and real and unshowy, that is at least an image of a certain kind of Britishness and Dunkirkness that I think is particular to a story like this and a picture like this. And for me it's a quite extraordinary combination of a spectacle about something in the centre which is very quiet and still. Yeah. And
that's for us, of course, in the UK. Do you think that will have a voice to speak to the rest of the world? Well,
I think that we need not own it as Brits in that sense, because, again, a simple but kind of brave conceptual choice is not really to make much of, except in their elemental form, the difference between Army, Navy, Air Force, or indeed between English, French, Germans. There's no whiff of a jingoistic or pro-Brit kind of thing. It's pro-humanity, I think, and he takes those nationalistic possibilities away. Doesn't judge. There's no judgment in the film, I don't think. There's no finger-wagging morality. There's no. On one level, there are no winners. At the same time, it is peopled with heroes, and I think that's universal. It puts a group of men, in this case, into a terrifying situation, and invites, through this visceral treatment, the audience to go, this is what it's like. So you don't need to know where they're from. Nobody seems to have a surname or a backstory or anything. You don't need to. It's only about being in this situation now and your humanity now. So anybody can connect with that. They don't have to have the badge of a nation in the forefront of their minds.
So, what did you think of the video? Thumbs up or down? Well, stay with me as I have an interesting movie fact for you. Daniel Day-Lewis insisted upon growing his own facial hair for the role of Daniel Plainview in the movie There Will Be Blood, threatening to quit the movie over the issue. Filming was halted for 5 days while he cultivated his facial hair. Now, if you haven't already done it, remember to subscribe and click the notification bell to always receive the latest trailers the moment they are online. Bye bye!